Well, so the recent data coming out of China definitely suggests that the growth momentum is weakening. And then at the same time, we're watching policymakers remain very timid in terms of supporting the economy. So for that reason, it is very natural for everyone to revise down the forecast. I think the key question here is, how much more policy support we'll get. It doesn't look sufficient right now. It is stepping up, and maybe it's also something about the U.S. election risk here that Chinese policymakers are worrying about.
I want to pick up on that point around external demand and external forces, because that is something now that's come on top of the domestic problem that China is suffering. In this context, policymakers before have stepped in. China has come to the rescue of the world before, we've seen in previous crises, but it does have so many homegrown issues now. What does it do in this context? What are the levers it could still deploy?
Well, they have a lot of options, but they have been super reluctant to do anything big. It's not the same policy mindset, certainly, after the great financial crisis. There's absolutely no appetite to save the world, because if you look at the message from the top, the focus is on productivity, supply side. This is what China is doing very well at. The problem is there is not enough domestic demand, and there's going to be more trade tensions. So domestically, they can whip up fiscal support. They haven't done anything. They have done, let's say, very, very little. They can push more on the housing. They can do things. They're just doing very, very slowly.
Why would I, as a Chinese consumer, as a stunningly effective Chinese saver, spend my savings, given everything I've been through as a Chinese consumer over the last couple of years? The Chinese save more than most people on this planet. Extraordinary personal savings rate, somewhere in the region of 40% plus. I can't see a good reason why those hard-earned savings will be spent in the next year or so. You can't persuade people to spend when they've just had an existential shock on their property.
Yeah, totally. That's a primary reason for the high saving rate getting even higher. There was the wealth shock is super negative coming from the housing sector. So actually, the first order of business for the Chinese government in terms of supporting consumption is indeed to stabilizing the housing sector, the housing prices. We're still not there yet. But the market has fallen a lot, right? So the question is, can they speed up some of the support further and faster? Yeah.
So obviously you're the China economist, but you must look at the broader ramifications. China being a nation of savers rather than adopting a more Western style of spending as well. That has ramifications, of course, at a policy level, and we're seeing greater tensions. And you alluded to political tensions. I can't see any way this gets any better in the short term if China has to adopt a more aggressive export strategy, and as such, tariff demands grow in the Western consumers as a response to that as well. This can't end well, cateris paribus, with all things being equal, can it?
Well, they're already having a very aggressive export strategy. When you think about it, it's not exactly directly for exports. It's because they're focusing everything, all the policy support, pretty much only on supply side, and they're depressing demand side with a lot of other policy. So it's a consequence of their strategy. And we're seeing China running massive manufacturing trade surplus here. And we're seeing trade tensions already ramping up. Actually, I think, now that the trade tensions are ramping up, and possibly with Trump, if he wins, it could ramp up even further. That could put necessary pressure on the Chinese policymaker to do more course correction.